This week on Erotic Awakening, power exchange when you have children at home, still not rock stars, and name for my owner.
Welcome to Erotic Awakening, an exploration of all things erotic. If you are offended by adult topics or prohibited by law, we recommend you stop listening right now.
We want to thank all of our patron supporters.
Head over to patreon.com/erotic awakening today and get your bonus content and support the show.
Hi, Dan.
Really? Hi, Dawn.
I'm just reading the script. That's what it says. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Dan.
How are you this fine morning?
It's kind of wet and nasty out there, so it's kind of like a low energy morning, but
It
that's
is.
okay.
Here
Right.
in the United States, the April showers are
Or May
not
flowers.
leaving. They're
Yeah,
hanging
April
out all the way
showers.
through May.
Yeah, so happy Mother's Day.
Oh, thank you. It is Mother's Day here in the Americas. For those that celebrate such a thing, happy Mother's Day to you.
Awesome.
And Dawn, other than that,
Yes.
speaking of Mother's Day,
Ooh, good segue.
thank you. One of the interesting aspects about when you and I got together is that we did have children in the home and they were very young and we were in a power exchange relationship. At least we were trying to build a power exchange relationship.
Right, with no role models of how to do that. And the kids were not super young. They were 8 and 12-ish at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we had friends that found out that we were on the naughty side and doing power exchange. And they were very confused about how we could do that with kids in the house and not warp the kids.
So recently we had a podcast listener write in and say, hey, we're starting a power exchange dynamic, but we have small kids in the house. How do you do that? And I said, well, I don't remember. So fortunately on the podcast today, we have Miss Darling joining us who does remember and can tell us all about having a power exchange dynamic with kids in the house. Miss Darling, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to discussing it today. And happy Mother's Day to everybody out there,
Ooh,
including
thank
myself.
you. Yay,
Including yourself.
Day.
It's an apropos topic.
So let's start off by who are you? What is your dynamic? And what does your household look like?
Sure. At the start of our dynamic, we did not date with the intention for kink. My husband and I met, dated, and married vanilla. We didn't talk about kink. We didn't know about kink. And we reached a place in our marriage that we were still very much in love with each other as people. But our marriage was failing. It was breaking down. We had power struggle constantly, but we didn't even know what that was. We just knew we were fighting a lot and frustrated. I don't know that either of us were sexually gratified now that I look back in hindsight. And so it was out of our failing vanilla marriage through the help of honest marriage counseling and learning how to communicate. This is what we want. This is what we need. We have to be honest. If we do love each other, we have to speak with honesty. And so we started disclosing to each other what our interests were. And we were just fortunate enough that our interests were in line with each other, that he came into it as a dominant personality. I'm a submissive personality. And we were able to, through communication, transition this very loving relationship that was failing into one in power exchange. So just for a quick timeline, in about 2010 is when we made the transition and started with, play in the bedroom and talking about it a lot. We moved into pretty quickly 6-month contract kind of 24/7 DS dynamic, all the time inside and outside of the bedroom, dominant and submissive. And then about 3 years later in 2013, we had in our local community a big ceremony of roses and signed up as master slave. So we've been living as master slave for about 10, 11 years now. And all of this relationship stuff has cycled around having children together, raising children in our home. And so from one infant to pregnancy and to, an infant and a toddler, and now into teenage age. And so we've kind of run the gamut of all the different ages, all the different evolution of our dynamic. And we live in a 1950s household. I don't know if you've read the book Raven Caldera's Paradigms of Power, Styles of MS Relationships. Ours is the essay for 1950s household. It's how we structure our marriage and our household to function. So I don't work for anybody but my husband. I work inside the home. He works outside the home and provides for us financially. And so we look very like old fashioned, I would say, very like traditional relationship. And so that's what we got. We're a white picket fence with a dungeon in the basement.
Oh, I love that. White picket fence with a dungeon in the basement.
I like that too. Thanks, Dawn.
Fabulous.
And obviously, I don't want personal information, but in general, I just want to confirm you do have children in the house and what their
Yes.
age ranges are.
They are preteen and teen now. So
Okay. So
Right.
when you started your power exchange, they were quite youngsters.
they were under one, I would say newborn age was when everything started falling apart and we started clearly communicating, maybe the pressure of having children and realizing we needed a change in how we were functioning in our household. And then, yes, so right around the time that my second child was born is when we really got the swing of like, holy cow, are we actually living master slave? Is this our home, our like final home is in the world of MS, 1950s MS. So yeah.
That's fabulous. And I love, and I will always recommend Raven's work.
Yeah.
So
Yes, please.
yes. And that book, I actually have that book in my storage that I meant to grab. Actually, hold please. Nope, it's not there. So I grabbed a couple of his books to reread again because I love their writings. But that's fabulous that you were actually able to figure out what would work to save the marriage.
Yes.
Right. So because Dan and I, we started out as power exchange. So
Yes.
we had other vanilla marriages that were not working. And I almost said walked away from those, but it's not that simple. And then, when we created our relationship, we started with the two preteens.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit different. So no role model. So at least you coming in, I'm assuming you were able to find role models, or what kind of information did you find at the beginning, if any?
Yeah, I think, of course, education is key. And so we did a lot of reading and research in the very beginning. The first year of our dynamic was a lot of like, I'm going to read this kink book that was recommended to me online, and I'm going to highlight it and take notes in the book, and then I'm going to hand it to him, and he's going to read it and take notes on it. And that's a great way to like communicate with each other when you do have family in the house or kids in the house, is like a mutual journal or like having mutual books that you're reading, because you could just tuck that away and do a private area of your bedroom. Or I put it on the pot sometimes because that's where he reads, hide it in the bathroom and leave a little pen.
Yeah.
And yeah. So reading online community in the very beginning, for probably the first year or so, it was at about the 1 year mark where we really realized we needed in real life community. And so we became a part of our local BDSM community. We began just attending things. Everybody is so kind and so welcoming and so lovely. And we realized very quickly, we're not the only people who have dynamics and enjoy this stuff who are also dealing with parents. And I think it's important to include in the conversation. There's a lot of multi-generational houses right now. So parents that age and have to live in the home. So there's a great discussion to be had around this topic about just how do we craft and execute a power exchange dynamic in front of others.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's in your own home, in front of kids, in your own home, in front of parents, at the grocery store, when you're traveling, things like that, to cement that dynamic together. And there's some great ways that you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me walk through the I think maybe an outsider's perspective of what a power exchange, and especially as you're identifying as master slave, what a master slave relationship looks like.
Well,
And
hold on to that, because the only person that had a reflection of what ours looked like, they thought I was chained to a chair all the time and asked me, how do the kids think about that? You being tied to a chair all the time. And I'm like, where the hell did you get that from? And I have too much work to do to be chained to a chair in front of kids.
So from an outsider's perspective, you might view someone who hears master slave relationship, they might say, oh, well, I expect when the master comes home that you're kneeling there naked, maybe with a drink in your hand, except of course for the big black collar that you're wearing.
Sure.
And, you wander around in chains and all that kind of stuff. And when he speaks to you, all of your responses are yes, sir, immediately, sir, as you wish, sir, regardless of who's around, right? That
Sure.
I assume is maybe what an outsider might think of what a master slave relationship looks like. What does
Sure.
it actually look like, though?
So for us, master slave is really about us making a final decision about division of labor, who is in charge of what, to identify, who is the leader and who's the follower. And we based it on our personality. It has nothing to do with like our gender roles or anything like that. Even though we're 1950s, that has nothing to do with it. He's an excellent leader. I'm an excellent follower. He does big picture things, and I do like the minutia, the COO organization of the household. I always tell people in the community that I meet that I'm much more likely to be found with like a magic eraser in my hand than a corset on my body. That's the reality of it. We have divided the labor in the house, and then we're exchanging power in some way. So I've given up control over making decisions, final decisions for myself, and things that the big picture decisions. And in exchange, he like provides for me and allows me to lead the life of my greatest fantasy, which is essentially to be led, to get rid of deciding for myself many things, to get rid of, and I always want to couple that with like, I still have a strong submissive voice where as long as I say anything respectfully, like my voice is always heard, he always listens. And so I think the important overall theme of dominance and submission in front of other people, whether it's kids or other people. Everybody understands the idea of discretion when they're talking about vanilla relationships. So people understand in a vanilla, happy marriage with children in the home, that it's really lovely to see a husband and partner, husband and wife, whoever, two people leaving the household and kiss each other goodbye with a nice hug. And I love you. I hope you have a great day. I'll text you later. Like that is appropriate show of affection and attention and, if you will, sexuality,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas of course, everybody understands that you're not going to, in front of your children at the breakfast table, eating cereal as a vanilla person, come up and make out for minutes at a time and hands down. Like people understand the line very clearly. And oftentimes with kinky folk, I find that we lean even more discreet, where we're so hyper aware of the fact that the drumbeat of our marriage it's in some way sexually driven, that we kind of veer the other way and make sure that we're constantly analyzing, is what we're doing discreet, is what we're doing appropriate, and it becomes second nature. And so in the conversation of discretion, like say for instance, your example is great about a slave should be kneeling naked at the door with, I do have a day collar that I wear all day, every day of my life. It's very discreet. It looks like a necklace. It's in every photo that I've ever had with my children in their life. I do have a play collar as well that I wear for public play or when we're private. I have a posture collar. And so in the example of should I be naked and posture collar and waiting at the door with his favorite scotch saying, "Oh, welcome home, master. How may I serve you?" Well, that's not the reality. But if we've intentionally decided that me simply getting off my behind and when he walks in the door, getting up from my phone or the dishes or stopping what I'm doing to just go greet him, then that can be dominance and submission. You could have subtle shows of power being exchanged as long as the two people involved in the dynamic are understanding of the fact that it's significant, it's a protocol, it's a rule that's been established.
Which is great, but do you ever miss the aspect of get to run around naked with the big collar on? And if so, do you do anything to recreate that time?
Sure, yeah. Now it's evolved a little bit over time, as I'm sure you guys are aware, as children age, different things become easier or harder. And so, when you have a baby sleeping in a crib, it's easy to be naked and kneeling in a bedroom because you're alone and there's no chance of, being bothered. In lieu of that, of having absolute privacy, we've always made it a priority to date. We have dated our entire marriage. Every Saturday night we go out. Our children have watched us. There's something a little whimsical and, old-fashioned, maybe even it speaks to the love of my 1950s heart, where they see every Saturday, mom at about 4 or 5 p.m. I go and I get dressed in beautiful clothing. They don't know whether or not I have underwear on underneath. They just see me walk out in a beautiful dress with my hair and makeup done for their father, my husband. And he's going to take me out on his arm and show me a lovely night. And then we come back, and then we'll go to a play party or a munch. I'll pack, a cardigan in case I have marks when I come home from the play party. There is absolutely a need for some sort of outlet, some sort of ability to act as if you are living your fantasy. Because I'm sure at some point when my house is empty, I'll be naked in a posture collar waiting with a scotch at the door when he gets home. And everything has a time and a place. And so you just make do with what you can. It's really helpful to have a village. I know we're really fortunate in that, where people can watch our kids, we can travel independently together to cons and stuff like that. And so that's really helpful.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
I love the whole notion of act as if you're living your fantasy, because we try to tell people all the time that when we created our relationship, we were trying to turn fantasy into reality.
Yeah.
And trying to make that work. And like I said, for us, we're talking late 90s. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have books, so all we had was fantasy books and try to pull those pieces out. So that's awesome that you guys have figured that out to try to live that fantasy and make a point to do the dates. I don't know that I dressed up on Saturday nights, but we did have a big ass toy bag that we carried with us. And when the kids started going out on dates, they're like, okay, I've got this duffel bag. What am I supposed to do with it now? Because they don't know what's in it. Right?
No, they have no. Yes. It's even our bag has even changed. Our tool bag has even changed over time as they become more aware. And I think that's a really important thing to recognize, is dynamics last instead of like weeks and months as you move into years and decades. That the constant communication and evolution of your rules, your protocols, your rituals, things that you troubleshooting. We have a weekly meeting between the two of us. And that's when we break down everything. What is working in the dynamic over the past week? What are our plans on our calendar for the next week to come? What does he need me to handle? It's like we save all the like heavy conversation and administrative stuff to make sure we're moving in the right direction for one meeting. So we're not constantly having conversation, because that's difficult to do around kids too. If I want to wave my hand to my husband and say, Master, I feel like I deserve the right to more orgasms, I'm not going to do that on like a random Tuesday when I'm trying to work on homework as well. So we do carve out once a week, just the two of us. We can speak to each other as master slave. I can call him sir, I can call him master, and hash out everything that's happening. And it really cuts out the day-to-day grind of maintaining these dynamics. Yeah.
Dawn, it sounds like a complete mirror of our relationship, where we're at, including the Sunday meeting that we do.
That we'll be doing after this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. The one thing I do want to ask you about, though, is do you ever have situations where the kids play the game? Hey, Mom, can I go over to Sue's tonight? I don't know. Go ask your father. Or, hey, Dad, Mom said I could go over to Sue's tonight, so I'm on my way out. Or where they play you against each other in some scenario.
No, I don't think that they ever have. Maybe it's because we've had such heavy structure in my husband's job in our household is to the financial well-being of the home. So he works, he makes the money, he plans the retirement, he pays for insurance, he does all of those things. And I handle everything else. So I'm not saying that my kids wouldn't, like, they certainly go, they're hanging out with him now while I'm doing this interview. They love their dad, but I don't think that they've ever really played against each other. Now, the question is, if I have to troubleshoot, since my husband's also in charge of final decision making. So whether or not we drink whole milk or almond milk, which you only need that information one time, all of those little details. But then if there's something where I have to troubleshoot a problem and I don't know how he would respond to it, being able to spur the moment, I just, what would he have me do? And I do my best to, throw the dart at the bullseye and then learn, you either make the right decision or you err and learn for next time.
Well, one more question for you, if you don't mind. And
Sure.
this leans more towards the BDSM aspect than the power
Sure.
exchange. But have you had any situations, because man, do we got stories about them, where the kids have found something like a writing crop or something like that that you've had to quickly think about? Oh, that I was thinking about buying a horse.
Oh, I think that we were really good about keeping things separated and locked away in like the primary. We had a nice primary suite where it's like our own bedroom, our own walk-in closet, our own bathroom. We did most of our play in the primary area. And so things just up high when they're young, lock things up when they're young, keep them in their tool bag when they're young. We have a long-standing rule with our children that if they ask us a question about anything and it's sex related specifically, our answer is this has to do with sex. It's a sex related thing. Because it doesn't come up just in a BDSM household. It come up in vanilla households too.
Sure.
When you hear music and what is the song on the radio, and Rihanna has us literally singing about S&M, and kids are singing to these songs. So our rule of thumb is, it's a sex thing. Do you want more details about it? And we let them lead us with, yes, I want to know more. Tell me, educate me. Or no, thanks, I'm good. I'm not comfortable learning more about whatever sexually is happening. And I don't think that there's ever been an instance of them finding stuff of ours in our home. And again, maybe it comes with time of like, we have the benefit of getting our training wheels on when they were also young, with like no memory and no ability to walk in a bedroom and find something laying around. Actually, I have one instance. My husband and I were playing. The children were at school. Our home was empty. And we were playing and had rolled up a rug, which has a very specific design on it. We rolled up the rug and we put out a massage table and we played on the massage table, cleaned it all up. Everything looked perfect, but they walked in the home and recognized like the swirl on the rug was the opposite direction. So it's like, they stared at it and they're like, what happened to the rug? Has it always been that way? And they sat there and had a conversation about it. And it's just a simple like, oh yeah, I cleaned it today. Or, oh yeah,
Right,
I was moving furniture and wanted to see how it looked. So I moved it out of the room. So you can be a little spontaneous and on your feet. But in terms of responding to anything that's explicitly sexual, we always offer them the option of receiving an age appropriate response, knowing like, hey, this is a sex thing. Do you want more information on it? And then responding appropriately. I'll be honest with you, most of the time they're like, nope, I'm good, thanks. I don't want to talk.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I'll go talk to my I'll go talk to my 12-year-old friend about it. I'll go talk to my friends about it. But
Exactly.
Yeah, our kids learned that they could ask us anything. They learned that it might take us a second to come up with an age appropriate response, and we would say to them, oh wait, let me figure out how I'm going to explain that to you. So they knew they would wait, and then they would push a little bit going, I'm still waiting for that explanation. And then they learned, no, don't push, because it's like, oh, they gave me an explanation, I don't think I really wanted that. So later, same thing, it'd be like, are you sure you want an answer? I will absolutely explain this to you. And you could see the wheels turning in their head going, no, nope, not important.
Thank you very much for your time today. How can people find out more about you?
Oh, you can go to, on FetLife, you can find me as Mrs. Darling, MRS Darling. And you can go to darlingdiscovered.com and get information about my first full-length novel. It won back in 2017, I think, Best BDSM Nonfiction at BDSM Writers Con. I'm a writer. I share all of my journaling online. And so if you check me out there, you'll find a lot more information.
According to my show notes, you are correct that you are an award-winning author of Darling Discovered, the true story of submission. Back from 2017 is when that won that award.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for your time this morning. Hang out with us uncomfortably for a moment. You were mentioning before the show where you lived, but we will not be going there. Instead, we are going to go to Ohio,
Pennsylvania,
Chicago,
Michigan,
Kansas City,
Las Vegas,
Minnesota,
and Toronto.
You can find us at any of those places. And if you don't remember all those places, Keep up with all of our events, book news, and discounts, and more via the Erotic Awakening newsletter.
And get your EA shout out like Bill in Texas,
Mikhail from New Jersey,
Jazz from Georgia,
Amelia from Wisconsin,
Demi from California,
Emma from New York,
Javris from Idaho,
and Tracy from Canada.
Head over to eroticawakening.com and sign up for our newsletter. The other thing that I would like to mention, though, is if you thought you signed up for the newsletter, you didn't get a newsletter just a couple of days ago when I sent it out, you might want to sign up again in case MailChimp bumped you off.
You are showing me that, and you're showing me the hundreds of spammers that have signed up for our newsletter for no clear reason.
I got rid of them too, so they were easy to spot. But yes, I cleared all that out.
So, Dawn, way back on episode 200 of the Erotic Awakening podcast, which came out in 2012, the episode title was "We Ain't No Rock Stars," and it was just a reflection of the 200 episodes that we'd done at that point.
Right.
And that it hasn't meant that we can't go to Panera Bread and be recognized. Stuff, weird things like that don't happen to us most of the time.
I was going to say, I can point out times that has happened to us where we've been in different states. And
I remember a Cracker Barrel like that.
There was a Cracker Barrel, and the time we were out with your stepmother.
Speaking of times that you have
in Minnesota.
Yes, that was the reverse situation where stepmom was like, well, where do those people know you from?
Yeah, because the people came up from behind us and had recognized our voices. So it wasn't even they recognized, because not all of our podcasts are visual. So most of them are audio. And they came up behind us and they were like, Dan, Dawn, oh my God, great to see you. And we're like, oh, we have no clue who these people are. And yes, the stepmom asked, we're like, we know them from the RV park. Yes, the RV park that we're parked at an hour away. That's where we know them from.
Well, the reason I bring this up is that just this morning, as I was putting together the show notes, I happened to be also multitasking and saw someone had mentioned they bought a copy of Living MS. I didn't know you could still get it. I thought it was out of print.
It's out of print.
So that is the second book that we published and the first one that we claim.
Ha.
Thank you.
Hey, I like the first book, but that's okay.
I know you do. But then later that same morning, somebody had mentioned I miss going to events. Specifically, I miss going to Power Exchange Summit, which is the Power Exchange event we used to run.
Well, that's cool. Well, then Mrs. Darling mentioned the Raven book. We've actually got a rating in that as well.
So we do indeed. It's neat that I still stand by that. We're not rock stars. We don't run around. I mean, as long as we've been doing this,
we're in a little pond.
We are in a little pond, but it is neat to see that things that we have created are still benefiting people or still bring people joy to think about. That's just kind of a neat reflection from this fine Sunday morning. Mrs. Darling, have you had that chance yet where someone has met you and said, wait, you wrote that book? Oh my gosh, I got this response from it or that response from it or something like that.
Yeah, I regularly get fan mail all the time, people who have read it and adore that I've shared. And my book, Darling Discovered, is the formation of our dynamic. It's a sort of like creative nonfiction. So it's a little bit sexy, but it's the actual starting from how do we have the first conversation, what it looks like to go to our first dungeon, what it looked like. It documents the first year surrounding the formation of our dynamic. And ever since then, I've gotten so many kind messages. I consistently get people. My master ran our local mask group. And we've done, when we were young, like when we were young whippersnappers, we ran the TNG locally. I started a group called Submissive Ladies United Together. So sluts, like affectionately. And it was for the support and education of female S-types in our local community. And even just, I've gotten a message in, that was 10, 12 years ago. And I've even just gotten like, sluts has made it to a new city, or we're continuing. I read your journal on how you distinguish DS and MS. It's changed my viewpoint. I get kind words all the time. There are times that I've gotten noticed in public by Kinksters. I always like to suggest to people, if you haven't heard it before, I call it a wink and a wave. Like if you feel like you recognize somebody from a munch, from a play party, from the community, but you're in a vanilla setting, wink and a wave is enough. You can talk at the next kink event. You can message them however
Right.
you message them on FetLife or anything like that. There shouldn't be a need for crossing those streams. Is probably safest for everybody because not everybody has accepting family members. Not everybody has the ability to
Certainly.
do that. And so I've gotten a lot of like wink and waves. I've gotten, yeah, it's been really lovely. And more than anything, we believe that the entire BDSM community is our mentor, always has been. When we've had polyamorous questions or ethical non-monogamy questions, we would go to the host, the person who leads the local poly group and say, can you sit with us? We are so grateful to be surrounded by the education of the community. And so, yeah, we're really grateful for that and hope that they feel as recognized and loved as you guys do, or, I do when people say kind words to me too.
How many ways can we name that people identify? So, and the reason why this comes up, someone on actually the BDSM community on Reddit was asking, well, I don't know what I should call my Dom. We don't like master slave and we don't like a couple of the other ones. What are my other options? So we're going to see how many options we can name.
This question actually gets asked a lot because people want to not use what's already out there, right? Or they just don't have an affinity to whatever language is being used. And the first one that popped into my head that I found was interesting, and you'll have to correct me on the pronunciation or these words, but it has a Star Wars theme to it. So what is it? Pata?
Oh, Padamine and Padme? I don't know.
I don't know. Something like that. But I know some people that one popped into my head because I'm like, oh, that one's odd.
Prepare for the angry barrage of emails.
I know. I so bad at that.
Okay, so you're going with that one.
I'm going with that one to start with because I would forget it otherwise.
Okay, easy ones. Daddy little girl or mommy little boy.
Master slave.
Dom sub. By the way, quick side note, Dom sub is the worst one to use simply because no one ever knows if you're talking power exchange or BDSM because they're so interchangeable. That's just my opinion.
Yes. So let's see. We have, I'm trying to think, owner and valet.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Versus owner property. Okay. Master and Kajira, which for our Gorian friends.
One of my favorite, can I pipe in? One of my favorite that I've ever heard is captain and first mate. It like sings to my soul. Because they really do see the sails. It's so lovely. It's a lovely metaphor almost.
Love that one. And then of course we've got the executive power exchange, which is CEO, COO.
Book and author, I thought was a particularly interesting.
Yeah, I forgot about that one. Book and author. Ours, we totally made up, which is Bellum and Bellet.
Golly, I know we must be missing. Oh, what about Victorian? What would a Victorian? What our friend in Columbus?
I know. All I know is it's my lady and nope, I can't think of what that is.
Okay, and
we're gonna be stuck because we're like both picturing the people going, what do they call each other? And I'm not, and I bet it's just my lady and the girl.
I guess you also, we would mention, I don't know, there's Guru Worshipper. That one's not very well known, perhaps.
Well, there's Guru and Thrall.
There's,
I'm trying to think, there's a Queen and Knight.
Queen and Knight, yes,
Queen takes Knight. And so just so many.
And I'm sure we're missing a few of them. Mrs. Darling, any others come to your mind?
I know owner and property is one that's really well known here.
Lots of people are coming up with very creative ideas because they want to be a little different. And like for us, we've just been changing our language in general from leader to, leader and follower, because that's what's being used in the academic world, things like that. And people find that they don't know what you mean, so they ask questions.
Hop over to the Discord today and add your titles that you've been using and the ones that we've forgotten. And also feel free to give us hell about that Lords of the Ring mistake that we made. Star Trek, Lord of the Ring. I can't keep up with them all. And there you go, Dawn. That is basically the podcast for the day, with the exception of the tentacle cock ring that I posted to our Discord channel.
You did. So you posted a tentacle cock ring. We may have to buy that and check it out.
I still do not understand how to wear a cock ring, where to put it, what it's supposed to do.
Well, I know where to put it.
Well, then you've had some experiences I haven't had, I assume.
Practice.
Okay, fair enough.
I've seen pictures. We can figure it out.
Yeah, pictures. Be a part of the Erotic Awakening Podcast community.
You can support us on Patreon and get early access to the podcast, a free version of the audiobook Polyamory Toolkit, free ebooks, member-only Discord access, and more.
Find all the goodies at patreon.com/erotic awakening today.
Help others find us. Take a moment to support the podcast.
Rate us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
Or just tell your friends.
Join the conversation with us and other listeners.
Use the links from the Erotic Awakening website for our growing Discord channel.
Feel free to reach out to us.
Contact us with questions, podcast comments, or just to say hi.
We're Dan and Dawn on Front Life.
Erotic Awakening on Instagram.
Or just email us at dananddawn@eroticawakening.com.
Bye, Dan.
Bye, Dawn.
Bye,
Bye, Miss Darling.